HD Nation.
This episode of HD Nation is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook at audiblepodcast.com/Techzilla. Time to get our HD Nation on.
Yeah, and although I loathe dongles in general, that did not stop me from stopping by the Apple store and spending $40 on the company's new digital AV adapter. This essentially provides me with HDMI output.
Got an SD? Is it an SD card slot?
You know, that's the first thing I tried to stick in there, but it's just a pass-through for the power and syncing cable, so I can leave that connected as well. That said, hey, the adapter itself is compatible with iPads, both the 4th generation iPod Touch and, like this, the iPhone 4. Now, mirroring, which if you want to mirror the iOS interface, that's only supported by the iPad 2.
Aww.
And the iPad 2 is the only compatible Apple product that supports 1080p video output.
Not that we've seen this so-called 1080p output.
If somebody would hand me the iPad 2, I will try it tonight. However, basically the iPads, the iPods, and the iPhone 4 are limited to 720p video output.
And this is where it gets interesting.
Yes. Of course, I did unsuccessfully try to put 1080p video on this thing, but iTunes just wouldn't even allow me to import the file. I think it does a resolution check before at least in my case. I imagine if I had the iPad 2, it would be fine. Anyway, 720p videos looked and played just fine. I even encoded a few of the 720p test patterns that are some of my favorites using Handbrake, basically to test the encoder performance and to check the output quality, and it all looked pretty darn good. Now, I compared the encodes that are optimized for the iPhone 4's native 960 by 640 resolution to 720p output, and I noticed that the 720p output actually looked noticeably better when viewed on a large screen 1080p HD TV.
Did they look better or worse on the iPhone itself? Or
very hard to tell the difference. Right. With the smaller screen and the smaller pixel density or the tighter pixel density, I really didn't notice a difference. But when I blew the picture up, compression artifacts were a lot more noticeable on the iPhone formatted content than it was, say, with straight 720p video.
File size particularly different between those two?
If you're aiming for a specific file size to go for, I'd say give it about 1 gigabyte per hour for 720p video in MPEG 4.
Were the iPhone 4 optimized files smaller than the 720p
Not really.
files?
They're pretty similar in size, maybe within, I don't know, I'd say about 20% each. In addition to encoded videos, of course, the digital AV adapter makes easy to do an impromptu slideshow, and videos from a Netflix Instant Queue played just fine as well. The only downsides to this setup, at least in my eyes, is it relates to the player software. I can encode a 5.1 audio track on a video, but I'm not seeing a way to select it, and the same goes for subtitles that aren't burned right into the video itself. Right. So if you're trying to get selectable, I'd like subtitles to appear. I know there's subtitles in that video stream. I don't see a control that allows you to do anything like that, and that's more, I believe, just a limitation of the player software that's on the phone itself.
Well, also, there's no subtitles in iTunes itself, so why would anybody possibly want support for subtitles?
I can encode them in there.
Universe.
Now, I guess if it's important to you, you can just burn those directly into the video itself, but then it's always going to be on there, and you can't make it appear or disappear as you prefer. They could really spice up the video player on here. I still have VLC installed on my phone. It's not the best app. I don't think they had the optimization in there, but
I can see you drilling through Apple's voicemail system to find Jonathan Ives' mailbox. Bro, it's time to spice up the iPhone video interface.
I did play a Windows Media video file though with the VLC app. That was pretty funny to me. I'm off topic. Anyway, not bad for a $40 investment. It gives me HDMI output.
So if you're a business traveler and you have access to HDMI, inputs on television when you travel, if you're looking for a way to drag stuff over to a friend's house.
Totally, and the Netflix streaming looks pretty darn good considering, even blowing it up to 1080p resolution. It was pretty nice. Oh, and just to let you know, the output on the HDMI coming out of my phone, it seems to be scaling everything to 720p, and I imagine that might go up to 1080p with the iPad 2.
Good to know.
Yeah.
MotoGP coming next week.
Oh, round 2.
Or MotoGP coming this week.
MotoGP started last weekend, and it is some of the best HD racing content on TV, folks. I'm a happy camper.
We haven't talked about what we're watching in a while, so I figured to mention he's watching MotoGP, and I'm trying to get through season 2 of Glee. Apparently I'm going back to high school with the places. My projector, my Woot.com deal of the day, my Optoma 1080p showed up and was immediately taken out of my hands and put into Robert Heron's hands. I didn't even get to take it home for a rigorous. He had to do the rigorous benchmark testing. He fired up SpectraCal's excellent CalMan calibration and testing software. I had to keep things consistent with our other front projector test results. He used the same Stewart Phillips Screen Studio Tech 100 screen that features a matte white surface that is low gain for even dispersion of reflected light and works approximately 3 to 4 times the projector, the Optoma 1080p, at least the refurbished version that I bought.
It's a consistent screen surface to shoot at. It's really good. Hey, you know what? The HD180, Patrick's new projector, it features a single chip DLP light engine, similar in fact to the Digital Projection's M-Vision Cin 230 that we recently reviewed. Now, it's completely unfair to make any direct comparisons between the picture performance of these two projectors.
Literally, one's like a $900 projector normally, the other one's like a $6,000 projector.
But we'll compare anyway. And you know what? We'll just see what that extra zero on the price tag of the Cin 230 gets you. First, let's start with the out-of-the-box performance of the HD180. Let's take a look at white balance. This is AKA how consistent its red, green, and blue color mixing is when creating shades of gray from black to white. That's a good definition there. And looking at the chart, you can see right out of the box, there's a pretty dramatic bit of variance going on from dark black all the way, or black all the way to white. That is not what you want to see. That basically will affect the color performance of the whole picture. So in darker scenes, you're basically getting color shifting that's unwanted and it affects how real or how convincing the scene's going to look on the screen. Now, each distinct shade of gray should be the same color. That's why they call it color mixing. And as the RGB balance graph in the CalMan software shows, there was some serious work needed to get everything tracking evenly at 100.
It needed serious work.
Oh, but thankfully, that HD180 provides a basic set of white balance controls that are pretty optimal for that very task. And as you can see, in the end, it came out looking pretty flat across the board. Now, most entry-level projectors, including the HD180, lack a color management system that can fine-tune primary and secondary colors to match the HD video spec. Green on the HD180 was particularly oversaturated, and the secondary colors were all off to varying degrees. Yellows were especially shifted a little toward red, more than you really want to see. Now, compare that to the out-of-the-box performance of the Digital Projection Cin 230, and you can understand where some of that extra cost is going in terms of just how is it performing right out of the box? How is it tuned at the factory, so to speak? Now, the display's gamma, any display's gamma, is a measurement of its light output at different input levels, and the result is logarithmic to match the response of the human eye. Now, the default gamma setting on the HD180 appears to be optimized for producing extra brightness rather than an accurate picture. However, it turns out that the projector's standard gamma preset got us pretty close to the ideal. Nice. It took some, it's basically going through each preset to see which one gets you closest, and there was one there that was pretty darn close. Lens-wise, here's where the big differences kick in.
Oh boy.
For the 92-inch Stewart film screen we used, that leaves us with a throw distance with the HD180 of about 10 to 12 feet.
Right.
It's not a lot of wiggle room, really, in terms of where you're going to be placing that projector. The Cin 230, I believe, we had about 12 to 16 feet with its lens package.
And optional lens packages. And I think that's one of the big things about high-end projectors. When I say high-end, for our audience is starting at a few $1,000s. It might be the low end for the true high-end. But they offer a range of lens packages so that you can customize your lenses to fit your room rather than hanging the projector where you have to because of the single lens that comes with the low-end projector.
Projectors starting in, say, the $1,500 range on up also include something called lens shifting, which rather than doing something, so say you have the projector mounted at a specific spot, but you need that image to move down or up or left or right. You can actually manipulate that with using just the lens movement rather than having to move the projector around. The HD180 doesn't have any of that. It's really becoming more a sense of you've got to put the projector in the right place to get the image squared up on the screen the way you want. Now, geometry of the picture as it's being projected out of the 180 was okay. There was some pin cushioning that was visible along the edges of the image. Also, sharpness and focus tended to drop off toward the outer edges of the image as well. Not as noticeable, though, in video content, but easier to spot with appropriate test patterns. I don't think you're really going to notice this kind of degradation in lens clarity on the edges of the picture just by looking at regular video. That's something you really almost need a test pattern to pick and choose between the two. Now, the Digital Projection Cin 230's larger, more capable lens provided a wider range of throw, like I mentioned, and fewer distortions. But again, 10 times the cost. Bottom line, you have arguably one of the most convenient projectors that is not so expensive that you'd be afraid to say bring it outside for an impromptu theater in the backyard.
I've got the toddler-friendly projector.
Totally. It offers HDMI and analog video inputs. The backlit remote is so bright, I was using it as a flashlight to get around the room. It is a brilliant backlit remote. It does help round out the entire package. And for 1080p performance that you scored for under $700, it's one of those things that I truly think everyone should own something like that. Hook your game console up to it. Playing Wii on a 100-inch screen.
Yeah.
Bring it out in the backyard for a secondary display for sporting events or for fun. There's a lot you can do, and because of the cost isn't so crazy compared to like a high-end home theater projector, you're more willing to do it. Yeah. Take the risk. Yeah. Bring it by the pool.
At this point, I just can't own a projector that's worth more than my truck.
No, nor should you, unless it's important and part of that spending budget.
Let me get the child out of school, then we'll talk about upgrading the projector. Hey, many of you have written in wondering what happened to the full list of Blu-ray releases. This week is a perfect example. Blu-ray, it's mainstream. There were 56 movies scheduled to be released today on Blu-ray. And I got to apologize. I know you want us to list all of them on air, and we will always put them all up on the episode page at techzilla.com or hdnation.tv. But literally, when you read 56 titles, you're talking about like 5 minutes of just reading titles. Oh, it's a long list.
It is. I don't mind doing it, but hey. Hey, shall we do it?
Let's do it.
I think it's time. Yes, indeed. It is time for the new Blu-ray releases for the week of March 29th, 2011. First up, The Secret of NIMH. This 1982 animated classic is a beloved favorite of many, including Roger and me. Based on a novel, it tells the story of a field mouse who has to save her son by enlisting the help of super intelligent rats from NIMH, or the National Institute of Mental Health. All previous VHS and DVD releases of this film have been pan and scanned, but now we'll see it presented in the original widescreen 1:85:1 aspect ratio. Next up, Mad Men Season 4. This AMC series has won the Emmy Award for Outstanding Drama for the past 3 years in a row, and for good reason. The premise may sound uninteresting. It follows those who work in an ad agency in New York City in the 1960s, but it has some of the most interesting and well-developed characters on TV today. Season 4 comes region-free on a 3-disc set with an MPEG-4 AVC codec, a 1:78:1 aspect ratio, and a DTS HD Master Audio 5.1 soundtrack. Blu-ray.com gives the content, the video, and audio quality all a rating of 4.5 out of 5 each, saying, quote, "The series has consistently raised the bar of just how filmic a series can actually look," unquote. They mention a few imperfections, but close with, "It's almost curmudgeonly to even discuss these niggling issues in light of just how brilliantly sharp and well-defined the 4th season of Mad Men looks on Blu-ray," unquote. Also released this week, Black Swan. This 2010 psychological thriller won Natalie Portman an Oscar, along with 25 other awards for that performance. This region-free release comes in a 1080p AVC codec, 2:39:1 aspect ratio, and a DTS HD Master Audio 5.1 mix. It also comes with a digital copy, and Target is exclusively selling a combo pack with a DVD as well. Extras include 4 featurettes, including 10 Years in the Making, in which Natalie Portman and director Darren Aronofsky talk about the making of the film, a Fox Movie Channel special that focuses on the actors and their characters, a behind-the-curtain look at costume and production design, and finally, a 3-part series that looks at the entire filmmaking process. As always, check out our show notes at techzilla.com or hdnation.tv for the rest of this week's Blu-ray releases. Hey, it's time to thank one of our sponsors, Audible.com. Audible.com is the leading provider of downloadable digital audiobooks and spoken word entertainment. Audible has over 75,000 titles to choose from to be downloaded to your iPod MP3 player and played back anywhere, anytime. Choose from books in every genre, science fiction, thrillers, drama, comedies, business, history, and more. Go to audiblepodcast.com/techzilla to get a free audiobook download of your choice when you sign up today. Again, go to audiblepodcast.com/techzilla for your free audiobook.